Hello, and welcome from one of the many faces in face-to-face learning this year. I'm here today to discuss screencasting with you and hopefully give you some ideas of ways that it can help make regular or remote teaching even more effective for you this year. I'm going to organize this into two parts. The first part is going to focus on what I'm personally most familiar with, and that's using a screencasting app called Screencastify to share content. And the second part is going to deal more with how to use the hover cam in conjunction with Screencastify to record and share, mini lessons where you are filming yourself doing some live performance or action with the document camera. First, to get started, screencasting in general terms refers to recording what's happening on your screen and then sharing it somehow. In my opinion, the most annoying example of this, which is easily found on YouTube, is kids who sit around on their couches and record themselves playing their favorite video game. And then they beam it onto YouTube so that their audience watches some kid playing a video game. I mean, how ridiculous is this? Instead of the kid playing the video game themselves, they're going to tune in to YouTube and watch some other quote unquote professional game player play a video game. I'm sorry. Maybe that's old man Prabhakar talking 20 years too early. I don't get it. Fortunately, you are not in the business of trying to become a YouTube celebrity in this manner, I don't think. You are going to be a YouTube celebrity for a much more noble purpose of trying to educate these youngsters. Now, with that little rant out of the way, let me show you or tell you a little bit about Screencastify. There are a few different apps you can go with for performing this task of screencasting. I use Screencastify. It is an extension to Google Chrome, so that's point number one. I use Google Chrome as my default web browser for getting information and so on through the web. You'll need Google Chrome, and from there you'll type in Screencastify. You'll install the extension, and it's free. The only, or not the only, but the main limitation of the free edition is that the videos you record are time capped at 5 minutes in length. This can become annoying once you start playing around with it, because you could be right in the zone and the video is going to end up being closer to 6 minutes, and then you reach your point limit and you gotta scrap it and start over and figure out how to trim a minute off. So the good news is, if you do end up giving it a try and you like it, it's a pretty reasonable 1-year subscription cost for educators of $29. So I have done that myself and have no regrets. That gives you unlimited video lengths. So once you have installed the Google Chrome extension for Screencastify and you are ready to go, you'll see, and I'm going to kind of show you with my arrow here, in the upper right part of my browser, you'll see a little red arrow. You click on that, and then this pop-up will come that I've magnified here on the slide. You'll see it says Record Unlimited because I have paid for the premium version. And you'll have three choices: browser, desktop, or webcam only. If you are planning to just record a video of you presenting to your audience, you might go with webcam only. And then that would give you the option of using either your document camera as your webcam or the built-in webcam on your MacBook screen. For me, I tend to use desktop. Desktop basically allows me the flexibility to hop around different apps, different things I've got open on my computer screen. And I can still, if I choose to, embed a little video of me as the presenter, which I've been doing so far in this video. You can turn that off. You can adjust the size and the placement of it, and so on and so forth. Browser tab, I don't use that as much. That is if you were planning to record a video where you knew you were just going to be using one specific app in your browser and not hopping around, so to speak. So here we are. I'm choosing desktop. The microphone, it's just going to be your default MacBook microphone for most of us, unless you have something special that you're plugging in. The option to embed the webcam, which I have turned on, and that's why you can see me and hear me narrating. And then you click record, and then it'll give you kind of a little countdown thing, and off you go. So with that out of the way, you may be, if you've never done this before, you may be sitting here and saying to yourself, well, it sounds simple enough, but he's not really going through the step-by-step nuts and bolts of how to do this. True. Screencastify, as an organization, has already created a 45-minute tutorial that will give you that level of step-by-step nuts and bolts, holding your hand through the process. And I'm going to include a link to that in the description of this video. And so if you are absolutely a new first-time user, never done screencasting before, this that I'm providing is not enough. This is just kind of getting your feet wet. You do need to go and click on that link and take that short course to get you the information and support you'll need to be successful and get started. Moving on. Let's go back in time to spring of 2020. Oh no! It's just conversation. You don't really have to go back in time. When I began using the Screencastify app to record stuff for math, the first question I asked myself was this: how do I want to capture the content? And so first I kind of imagined this setting where I put the camera on a tripod and had it pointed at the empty whiteboard, and there I was doing my thing on the whiteboard. And then for me personally, I just kind of dismissed that because I didn't like the idea of the back of my head being the thing that most of the audience was looking at. It's getting a little lighter back here. So my next thought was, all right, what if I filled up the whiteboard beforehand? And then it was more me pointing to stuff and talking over it. And that's pretty much where I tended to be. That's what felt the most comfortable to me as how I wanted to capture and share content. Now, there's a third avenue that I also explored and did use, and that was this: using somebody else's content visually and then talking over it. I provided the narration. What that looked like for me was there were a few presentations from Teachers Pay Teachers that fit with what I was trying to do, where somebody else had created the visual content, and I simply opened that on my computer, started the recording, and then it was me talking over that. I also got a couple things from Think Central, where it's answer key, whatever kind of stuff, where I would display that on my screen, and it would be my voice talking over that. So let's take a look. I'm on my screen here. This was one of the first things I did, where I literally just had this blank sheet of paper in my house, and I just wrote out with marker and pen a slide. What is a fraction? I took a picture of it, click, uploaded that onto the computer, inserted that picture into Google Slides, and then from this Google slideshow, made my recording, my screencasting recording. Similar deal, where I embedded the webcam like you have been seeing me so far, and I was just talking over this content that I had created. Here's a similar thing, except instead of using a blank sheet of paper, it was a photo of my classroom whiteboard. The shine kind of bothers me, but what you do? It's not necessarily a world-class recording studio. In my 5th grade class, I try to have a life skill that the kids are working on each week outside of school. This was something that I typed up for them actually near the beginning of the year, and I thought with the closures and stuff, it was a good idea to try to bring that back. And so this I just copied and pasted from my Google Doc that I'd created into this Google slideshow, talked over it, read it aloud to them, talked over it. Moving on. Oh yeah, here was a handmade quiz as just a quick check or a little assessment. And then what I did was I showed this. I asked the kids to pause the video and get a blank sheet of paper and copy this down at home. And then I offered a little bit of guided practice as I talked through and read aloud each problem. And then I asked the kids to pause it again. And then, of course, on a separate slide, I showed the answer key, and then I narrated over that and explained my work. Honor code to self-correct, right, and grade, at that time at least. What else? Here is something that I got from Teachers Pay Teachers, some word problems. I'd show the word problem on the Google slide, narrate over it, pause it, ask the kids to do their best to solve it, and then meanwhile, I had printed this out and handwritten my work over it, taken a picture, uploaded it onto Google Slides, and I'm talking through the answer key. So that's, in a nutshell, the kind of thing I did for math. I guess I'll just show you one last little thing. This was kind of goofy. This was a stretch. I don't see myself doing this going forward, but I'll just show you. Went to Think Central. I got the answer key page to show up on my computer of the page that I had assigned as practice for that day. And I basically recorded myself doing this as guided practice section by section. And so I know there was one teacher who asked me, how did I take the screenshot from Think Central? Here's how to take a screenshot from anywhere. Hold down the Command, Shift, and number 4 button, those 3 buttons, Command, Shift, 4. That'll bring up a little crosshairs that allow you to make a rectangle of your choosing, and then that will beam that screenshot to your desktop. And then from there, you can easily import that into Microsoft PowerPoint or Google Slides for your own purposes. So I did that, and then I just put this little no peeking thing over because I wanted the kids to hang with me for the top half of this sheet first, and then the big reveal. I show them the bottom half, and we go through that. Again, I'm just sharing this to give you an idea of something that could be done. Definitely not recommending that you do that. Please don't do that. All right, so that's a little bit about math. Again, in the next video, we'll kind of look more at if you wanted to record using the old reliable document camera. Can we call it old reliable? No. I ended up calling it turn everything off and turn it back on again, and it somehow works. Usually. But in the next video, I'm gonna show you a little bit more about how to use the document camera to record doing a little math exercise, math work, and then use the screencasting program to share it. So all this being said, again, anything that you can bring up on your computer screen, you can record and share through Screencastify. So even looking at Think Central, I could click on anything in here and record it, narrate over it, share it. One of the best things about the Screencastify app is how easy it is to record and share. The sharing in particular, you don't have to leave the Screencastify app and think about sharing as a second step. From the Screencastify app, if you just want to get a link to the recording that's being saved to your Google Drive, share that out somehow, you can do it that way. If you want it to automatically beam it onto your YouTube channel, you can do it that way. And there's other choices that, well, those would probably be the two most common choices. But that's what I loved probably best about it, is the simplicity of the design and the way that I'm not having to use multiple apps for the purpose of recording and sharing content. Now, you could argue, well, there were a few upfront steps in getting the content, gathering it, screenshots, whatever, putting it into the Google slideshow. That's true. There was a little bit of upfront work and kind of thinking through what I wanted the content to look like, and then sequencing it, putting it into the Google slideshow. But once you, that's like anything else, once you get your process and your workflow down, those steps are pretty efficient. It's just about imagining and thinking through and trying out a few different ways and landing on what you're most comfortable with, what you think is achieving your purposes. All right, moving on. Let's say that you wanted to imagine how screencasting, what it might look like for reading. Well, here's the CKLA Amplify website, and they're going to come out with something called Hub, and something else I believe that is a new offering that is outside of the scope of what I'm presenting on today. But let's just say, for giggles, I wanted to get into one of my readers. I could activate that a few different ways. If I just wanted to fire up the PDF of the reader, I could go right here and I got to move my screen out of the way. Click on my grade. Let's click on poetry. I see poetry was not a good example. Okay, let's try again. Renaissance. There's the reader. And here it is. And I don't know, do you imagine yourself reading a chapter of this aloud? You could. Point is, the option is there. I can bring up through the CKLA website the material and access it that way. I could, CKLA also has the ability to read it aloud to the kids. So you look at the audio books here. I'm scrolling down to grade 5. Firing this up.
The Renaissance. Patrons, artists, and scholars.
That's a route that you could go down. There's something kind of wacky that I did in the spring where, and we can talk about this if you're curious about it. Again, not something I'm recommending. It's just something that I tested out and did do. I was able to take the audio book, the sound, the audio file, if you will, and have that playing in the background while I showed on my screen the PDF. So I don't know. I mean, I feel like my narrator's voice is just as good as these voice actors. So I don't know what I gained out of that, but it was something that was possible if you wanted to do that. If you wanted to show on the screen the words and also have it be read aloud. And with all that being said, I'm pretty sure Hub is going to do that automatically. I don't think you're going to have to do a bunch of tricks this year for that to be possible. So anyway, I'm just kind of thinking through and showing you and getting you to imagine the CKLA resources that we have, old school, uh, in paper format in our classrooms, in theory, is all available digitally online. And in theory, you can pick and choose which of that you want to do a screen recording of, with giving yourself the option of being the narrator, talking over it, sending it out. I don't think it's quite as easy to be a substitute for instruction of of a phonics or a skill or a reading strategy per se. I do think it could work for providing background knowledge around some text or a reader, or giving some prompts for kids to think about and maybe do a written response as a follow-up to reading a piece of text. But I'm curious if you have some ways uh, and better ideas of using screencasting in the context of CKLA and your reading comprehension instruction. Let me know. Moving on to writing. So in the spring, I had fifth graders working on, and this is just showing you what the plan for the week looked like. I'd in my, this is just a Google Doc. At the very top, I had a weekly playlist of all of my screencasting recordings, along with other videos, educational videos on YouTube that fit with what I was trying to do that week. And I put it in a sequence, and it was just all arranged that way, so that you just click on the playlist and go to where you need to be. And then under that, the specials choice board. And then the day-by-day plan for math and reading. Writing. So for writing, I had them working on future careers project, where they did some survey stuff, personality test stuff, landed on a short list of careers that would be possible fits for them. And then another set of tasks to land on one that they wanted to focus on for the project. And then I gave them written requirements on what I wanted them to research and report on. So with all that being said, so now I've kind of explained the project. This is an example of how I tried to pull this off, where I basically saw myself more as their project coach, not necessarily their writing coach. I did give them feedback on not necessarily a first draft, but a medium draft, I'll say. And I pointed out, here's where it looks solid. Here's where you need to add a little bit more, do a little bit more digging, stuff like that. I think depending on how much time you want to spend, you could, Google Docs lends itself very well to collaborating. And again, this might be outside of the scope of this presentation, but I'd be happy to talk to you one-on-one on ways to use Google Docs to provide feedback to students on things that they're writing. But for the purpose of screencasting, I focused on a mini lesson. I gave them examples of mentor texts. I showed them the process of picking an example career, doing a web search on it, trying to wade through all the different entries that came up in my search to find the good stuff, the stuff that really fits and is of a reading level that a fifth grader can understand, and so on. And then just the research skills to go through those different sources and find the content that they needed to meet their requirements. So that's that. And I think I'm nearing the end of this part of my presentation. Again, in the next video, we're going to go through how to use Old Reliable, this document camera, to take a recording of something that we're doing live, and then use Screencastify to share it. And in the description of this video that I'm wrapping up now, I'm going to include the link to the official tutorial of how to get started with Screencastify that Screencastify has created. And again, I highly recommend that for new users, anybody who's new to screencasting. I hope this was useful, and I look forward to collaborating with all of you on screencasting and everything else that we can do to make remote learning more successful this year.